Greetings and welcome to Campus Conversations. I'm Dan Mogula from UC Berkeley's Office of Communications and Public Affairs. It was yesterday that the campus announced what was a difficult decision to begin the fall semester with fully remote instruction due to increasing COVID cases in the region around the campus and across the state. So this is the second in a series of campus conversations designed to answer your questions and provide you with the information you need to make the best possible decisions. Today, we'll be talking about plans for instruction and academic support. We already have a large number of your previously submitted questions, but we're open to more, and you are welcome to post your queries to our Facebook Live site. Any questions that we don't get to today, we'll do our best to address on the relevant websites that were listed in yesterday's campus message. I'll be sharing the addresses of those sites again at the end of today's events. The future informational events we're going to be having include a special session for new admits, freshmen and transfers. That'll be on July 29th at 5 p.m. And then the last in the series on August 11th, also at 5 p.m., we'll be talking about supporting the student experience during these challenging times. Now, without further ado, let me introduce today's panelists, professors all, and get today's session started. Paul Alivisatos is the Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor. Oliver O'Reilly is the chair of our Academic Senate. Lisa Garcia Bedoya is Vice Provost for Graduate Studies and Dean of the Graduate Division. Bob Jacobson is the Dean of Undergraduate Studies in the College of Letters and Sciences. Folks, thanks for joining us today. I want to go around the room, starting with you, Paul. I think it's no secret that there was a lot of frustration, and I think maybe even disappointment about how the spring semester ended. We quickly had a transition from university life as we knew it to something far different. And I think the speed left a lot of people dissatisfied. So let me ask each of you, again, starting with Paul, what were your main takeaways that you have tried to ensure we're applying to all that we're going to be doing in the fall?
Thank you, Dan, and thank you to all of those who have joined us. I'm so grateful to you for joining us today. Dan, here, you're right. It was a very abrupt transition, a massive one. Our community went into it with a lot of adaptability and I would say resilience, but nonetheless, it was very, very hard. And I think I take in mind two things that we will really work hard on in the fall and which I think we've improved at enormously. One is how much the sense of community is lost when people are not together. And we learned a lot in the spring about how to build cohorts virtually. Our Berkeley Connect series of courses, for example, are ones that bring freshman students and transfer students together and really create amongst them a sense of community. We learned a lot in the spring about how to do that virtually, and I think it will work very well to help people feel a part of Berkeley. We will do a lot in that regard. The other thing we learned is really very serious and something we take really as an important issue, and that is that much of remote instruction has inadvertently acted like a kind of inequality amplifier. The most disadvantaged have often the weakest internet connections, the hardest ability to access maybe the most difficult environments to study in, and so on. So we will be undertaking a whole series of measures that we'll be talking about as we go along that will attempt to address those kinds of issues for our students.
Yeah, and I look forward to getting into those details. But in the meantime, Lisa, from a graduate student perspective, what were your takeaways from the spring semester?
Well, just to lift up what Paul was just saying, really that the effect of COVID varied significantly and made visible inequities that were already present amongst our students. The best thing we learned, though, is that when different parts of campus work together in order to address those needs, in fact, we can be quite nimble and quite effective. So the basic needs group on campus deserves incredible credit for how they came together for undergraduate students and graduate students to identify need, to make sure need got to people in real time, to think about all the different ways in which they needed support in the spring. And so appreciating that those relationships need to continue and that collaboration needs to continue is something that we learned. And that depending on the type of program students are in, that we have such diverse graduate education on campus. So students in one-year programs were especially disadvantaged, losing basically almost a whole semester of the opportunity to be with their cohorts, students who do field work. And so we're really trying to be, again, nimble and do the best we can within the public health guidelines to provide the different kinds of supports that different students need in order to be able to make academic progress in this very difficult time.
Oliver, thank you, Lisa. Oliver, let me come to you next, and maybe specifically from a faculty perspective, given your position as chair of the Academic Senate, some of the key learnings from the spring that we're hoping to apply in the fall.
Yeah, so thank you, and thanks to everybody for joining us today. First, I would like to acknowledge that what happened in the spring, pivoting to remote instruction in mid-March, and also dealing with a health pandemic at the same time, was incredibly challenging for our students and also for instructors, who then many of whom ended up at home having to childcare and also having to homeschool their children. So we've learned a lot from that experience. We've put new systems in place. We are aware of childcare being a major issue for instructors. Instructors are also aware that remote instruction is more demanding. It is more challenging. It takes a much more conscious effort to work with students and develop cohorts. We've worked pretty hard over the summer to put better systems in place to help with that. I think we also take pride in the fact that the majority of our students got through the spring semester, which is one of the most extraordinary semesters in the history of the Berkeley campus and in the history of education throughout the United States. And we're very proud of them for doing that. And we're also take confidence that we can do even better in the fall. We are more prepared. We also know much more about this health pandemic. In the spring, we weren't even sure what the health conditions of instructors would be in April, and we were prepared for the worst. It was an extraordinarily difficult time. But I think we have prepared much more for the fall. We've spent most of the summer getting ready, and I think that will help us tremendously.
Thank you. Bob, just to finish up this initial round, as Dean of Undergraduate Studies, you've got your ear close to the ground, in contact with students constantly. What did you learn that you hope that we're going to be able to apply in this upcoming semester?
I think it's been already said that we have such a wide range of students and such a wide range of experiences that we need to figure out how to adapt to that. And staff and faculty have been spending much of the summer getting ready for that wide range in the fall. But more than that, I think we've learned that our students understand what's important, and they can sort of put aside some of the little things that actually make the place kind of great, and strive through to continuing their educations, continuing to get ready for next semester's classes and their careers and everything else. I was actually very, very pleased by how students managed to take that message and turn it into concrete actions.
Super. Paul, I want to come back to you. Lisa, I think everybody mentioned to one degree or another about equity and the concern about disparities. And one of the things that I know we launched over the summer, maybe earlier, was the Student Technology Equity Program. Talk to us a little bit about what that is and why it's so important.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, the STEP program, Student Technology Equity Program, it's a wonderful program, I think. And I wanted to say a bit about what it is. It will support undergraduate and graduate students who lack reliable laptops, Wi-Fi, or other technology that they need in order to be learning in a period where remote instruction is the dominant method. And there's also a lesson in this particular program that I hope will also help people understand what it's like to be at Berkeley. This is a program that we were able to create very quickly during this period, because our students had done so much work up front. Every year we work very closely with the student government leadership, and we select a certain number of projects to work on that they choose. And 2 years ago, they chose this topic of technology equity as the topic they were most interested in. And so at that time, it was Melanie Amarikwa, who was the ASUC, the student union head of academic affairs. And We worked very closely with her and a whole team of other students and brought in financial aid, student affairs, the technology group, the IT group, and they crafted a detailed program and budget, which we have been trying to we've been getting ready to implement. But when COVID hit, it was really ready to go, and we've allocated now $4.1 million to the program. And I'm pleased to say that thousands of students will be receiving technology at their homes before the semester begins. And there are still some funds left that people can apply to in order to get access to the technology. And an article about that was in Berkeley News yesterday. And I just want to say, express my gratitude to Melanie and also to Asha Jain, who worked for a year on this, 2 undergraduates that helped conceive of and helped design this program. That's a typical Berkeley undergrad. They really make change, and they make it not just for themselves, but they really try to help everyone around them.
Thanks, Paul. And that sort of segues nicely into a question I'd like to ask you, Oliver, and let's get down into the weeds a little bit here. What exactly are we doing or have we done to improve remote instruction that you believe will show up as students return this fall?
So I think this seems like a long time ago, but in the fall we had power outages, PG&E power outages, and that forced a lot of us to rethink how we would deal with instruction during these types of events. And we've leveraged the work from that. A task force was set up in November, and that task force worked all through the COVID-19 crisis in February, March, and April to develop a set of recommendations for the campus. Those recommendations ranged from advice on remote proctoring to technology needs for students and faculty, to how we should do assessments for more equitable grading, how we should also do assessments and final exams in a way that would reduce academic dishonesty, for instance, not grading on a curve. That group finished its work in April, and most of the recommendations were implemented immediately. Those recommendations will help us in the fall. Another group was then set up to look at remote proctoring of exams and the honor code and student conduct. We've been meeting regularly with the Office of Student Conduct over the summer to help deal with some of these issues and to streamline the process for faculty, and also for faculty to understand how they can adopt best practices. Best practices were promoted on remote instruction, assessment, instructor FAQs and student FAQs were posted, continually revised throughout the summer. An instructional planning group was set up at the beginning of the summer to help give advice to faculty on different types of courses and the best practices to do remote instruction and to do assessment with them. It's been a huge effort involving hundreds of faculty and hundreds of staff all throughout the summer to get us ready for the fall. There is still work to do. I think people appreciate how challenging. This is not going to be like a regular semester. It will be challenging, it will be difficult, but I also feel we're better prepared for the possibilities that will happen. I also think instructors are more aware of the challenges that students have to deal with in terms of inequity of wireless access, access to quiet places to work, and are more sensitive to that. There's been lots of discussions among faculty about that. We've also held discussions with faculty throughout the United States where we've gotten best practices about what to do in the fall from them. And faculty have really worked together throughout the system, out the University of California system, and throughout the country to help each other through this. The Senate has also had regular meetings with the student leadership, both for the graduate students and the undergraduate. This really ramped up after spring break last year, and those meetings have continued throughout the summer. So we're more attentive to students. I feel like the Senate is faculty are doing a better job of listening to student concerns. And there's much more of a heightened awareness that this is not an easy mode of learning for a lot of our students. and that we as instructors will have to do more. We have to be more effective in the fall, and we have to rethink some of the ways that we've normally done things, like building student cohorts, building student engagement, assessing students.
Got it. So let me just ask you to dive a little deeper. And we don't need to be encyclopedic at the moment, but can you give us a sense or a taste of, when you talk about best practices, what do you mean exactly? How a professor shows up on screen and delivers a lecture through Zoom? What exactly are we talking about here?
So we're talking, well, so a specific example is, instead of having one or two very high stakes exams, break it up into several lower stakes assessments that are distributed throughout the semester. So that if there is issues with bandwidth, or there is issues with wireless, then the students that can be accommodated a little easier. Knowing when you assign an exam that you cannot just assume that everybody's on Berkeley time and you give 50 minutes for the exam and you start it at 12:10. You need to allow students time before the exam to make sure that they're set up properly. And you need to give students extra time at the end of the exam to make sure that they are able to submit their exams in Gradescope or whatever system you're using. And you also need to be able to make sure that the students who are on different time zones are also accommodated. We've also learned that student services are very important, and student advising is also very important. And so all of the student advising was put online rapidly in the middle of last semester. All of that now is in place for the fall. So we can monitor students and how they're doing and progressing, and we can serve them better and basically keep an eye on their progress in a better way. I also think faculty understand that, if we're giving a lecture synchronously, we should also have a backup system where the students are also able to access the lecture after the fact, in case their wireless broke down, or in case they're in a different time zone and it's much harder to access, or in case a family emergency has come up and they need to take care of something during class time. So these are the things that we've learned are possible, and that we must make sure we accommodate in our students.
Super. Bob, let me come to you with the next question. As Dean of Undergraduate Studies, let's talk a little bit about those things beyond the classroom. Getting a lot of questions from parents about tutoring and about office hours and about study groups. How do you see all of that unfolding? And what can you say to sort of assure people that to the extent possible, students are going to still have those sorts of opportunities of interaction and engagement?
It's a lot harder to run into your professor in the hallway after class. So what we've discovered is that we have to be more organized about this. And surprisingly enough, office hours are not the problem. During normal times, students are always a little bit hesitant to show up to office hours and things like that. But once faculty start having times via Zoom or phone calls or other mechanisms, it becomes much more routine, and we're seeing many more students willing to take part in that. It can be a little difficult to make friends in a class to the point where you can set up a study group. So quite a few faculty have been using the first minutes of the first few lectures to help people do that, to show them ways of producing cohorts or using the chat in Zoom to have students identify, I'd love to find a study group at Thursday afternoon, anybody? So this beginning agency has to develop among the students. But once it does, they're generally finding ways to do these things. The Student Learning Center is going to be open and staffed remotely. There's some issues around making sure we have people who can cover strange times for people who are very remote. But I think that's going to get done. Similarly with advisors, we actually have 22-hour-a-day coverage at this point. So that people who are remote or have something come up suddenly can deal with it. Really, Berkeley is trying very, very hard to find ways of helping everybody who raises a hand. But we're not in a position to track people down, and we probably won't be. So the message to students and their families is to please don't hesitate to ask if you need something.
Got it. And so were you saying that lectures will be recorded? Because I know there's a lot of interest from international and out-of-state students and students who may have to work during the day, whole variety of reasons. Will all lectures be recorded?
I can't say that all will. I think a very large fraction of them will be something that we call asynchronous, where the information is available. But certain things may still require specific timing, particularly interactive discussion sections and things like that may still require that the student engage around certain times. And I think one of the things we've learned about exams, although Oliver was right that we have to spread those out and make them lower stakes, we also have to figure out how to administer them. So some of them might be of the form you could take it at one of these 3 times. You can't necessarily take it whenever you want to.
Got it. Lisa, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just want to add quickly that it's very different to take a course that you designed to be in person, forgive me, that's my dog, and move it online than it is to design a course from the start to be remote. And so to appreciate the issue of asynchronous and synchronous, so what good remote instruction does is it creates what are called flipped classrooms, which are that you have perhaps lectures provided asynchronously or certain resources that students are expected to learn on their own, and that you take that time together, that synchronous time, to really be interactive and encourage students to engage with one another and teach one another. And so the study group issue can come out of that interaction. And so there are good practices about how best to leverage actually the opportunities that remote instruction gives in terms of giving opportunities for multimedia, for different kinds of group projects, for different kinds of resources for students to create their own artifacts for other students to learn from. And to say that those are the things that our faculty and our graduate students have been working on this summer that should help that building of cohort and community that we know is so important for student learning.
Paul?
Just quickly to say a couple of things. One is I really would like all international students who may be seeking a visa to know that we're committed to working with them to help them come to be with us, but also to let them know. And the Berkeley International Office is the place to work with. They're very skilled and they're very committed, and we are committed to our international students. And I also would like them to know that in many cases where we have classes that we anticipate large international enrollments, we may have sections which are specifically at times that are matched to their time zone so that they can participate in a normal time.
Got it. Bob, I want to circle back to you with another question just came in from Facebook Live, and people are asking about how will classes involving lab work, studios, or hands-on programs work this fall? And folks, if you want to add to one of your colleagues' answers, just throw your finger up in the air and I'll make sure to come to you. But Bob, let me start with you on that one.
Well, in the worst case, high-level labs may not actually be possible remotely for some students. You could imagine a senior level chemistry lab where there's just no way to do it remotely. But those are quite rare, and those departments are committed to finding other ways to help those students progress toward their degree at an appropriate rate. Much more often, we're seeing departments trying to figure out how to use a combination of remote hands, where a GSI is in a lab and working with the students over video. Someone else is doing the actual manipulations while the students are interacting around what's next and what they're seeing and what they're observing. That's not as good as being there, but again, it's a matter of, can you do the learning you need to progress toward the next thing, toward the next semester, et cetera. There are a few cases where departments, particularly for very introductory things, are making up instructions for how to do this physics experiment if you can find a ball and a stick. But what we're not seeing really is much concern about learning in those kinds of courses. We will find a way to get the learning to take place in those kinds of courses so the student is ready for the B class and the C class later on.
Got it. And Paul, that offers up a segue to something else that's sort of a key part of all that Berkeley offers, and that's the ability of undergraduate students to participate in research. What do we foresee in that realm?
Yeah, well, Berkeley is just a wonderful playground for research, and the discovery of new knowledge is something undergraduates are truly invited to become a part of while they're here. And it will be no exception in the fall, and it will be no exception while we're obliged to have instruction be remote. There'll be plenty of opportunities. I mentioned earlier the Berkeley Connect program, and I really want to suggest to transfer students and to freshmen that they look for those Berkeley Connect classes, because they will not only build a cohort, but they'll help you build the skills and also familiarize you with the pathways to become involved in what we would call discovery experiences or research opportunities. We have an undergraduate research apprenticeship program called URAP, and faculty and staff researchers post projects there all the time. There's 100 posted right now that will be available with a closing date of August 12th. And so that's a pretty good indication that people are figuring out ways to do this. Some select undergraduates may have the opportunity to actually physically go to laboratories where there may be graduate student researchers working, but that will be a very unusual kind of circumstance. But believe me, there are a lot of remote research opportunities, and our research labs were frankly all shut down for months. And during that period, all of the research groups developed a whole new set of projects, mainly involving ones that might involve computation, data science, use of sources that are available online, many other such things. There are plenty of opportunities for students to become involved in research. And it's a distinguishing feature of Berkeley, the kind of environment it creates for undergraduates to be involved in that. So we really encourage people to step up. In my own laboratory, I can say there are, in the springtime, we have more than 60 undergraduates that we supported remotely last spring, and it worked okay to have a kind of an introduction to research. And there are 5 undergraduates right now: Carolyn Gonzalez, Amolia Grandi, Tierney Kaufman, Aja Liu, Amy McGowan Green, and Adam Sedlak. I think that was 6. They're all involved in research projects right now, mostly doing stuff remotely, but really helping us enormously in our work. And we so value them, and I think they get a great experience from it.
Lisa, I want to talk to you a bit about graduate students, because we're talking about all the things we're doing to facilitate remote instruction. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of extra work, and I think that's one of the reasons we're getting questions as to whether there's going to be additional compensation for graduate student instructors who will have to help carry some of this extra load.
Yes, we appreciate that the spring created a lot of extra effort across the board for everyone, and we really want to make sure that in the fall, we're better able to keep the work aligned. So for folks who don't know, our graduate students are unionized. Their contract specifies, depending on the percent of their appointment, how many hours they're supposed to be working each semester, and we need to keep to those hours. And so we are committed in graduate division to talk to faculty. We're going to be holding workshops with faculty in the fall to remind them of those hours and to provide them with ideas about how they can best structure the work for their GSIs to make certain that they're staying within the time limit that the contract requires. The other option instructors have is they can increase the percentage of their students' appointment to align with whatever the workload is now. We appreciate that for international students, they cannot go above 50%. And so that may not be an option for them, but for other GSIs, that is an option. And the last thing to say is it's going to be especially important in this semester to just communicate. Faculty are required before the semester starts to sit down with their GSIs to talk about the expectations, to look at the timeline and how much time each particular task is going to take, and to make certain that those align with their obligations under the contract. And then the GSI should be communicating with their faculty member if those hours aren't what they end up, what they expected them to be. And if that communication doesn't work, every department has a faculty advisor for GSI affairs, and also the department chair. Both those folks are there to help in those conversations and really help figure out how to make sure that this works for our graduate students in these instructor roles. And then also every department has a union representative as well that can help with that process. But we think it's very important for GSI workload to be managed while still making sure that we provide the best education possible to our students.
Thank you. Oliver, if the interaction between undergraduates and graduate students is important, so too is that interaction between undergraduates themselves, student to student. It's part of the college experience. And, we're getting a question. One of the questions just came in on Facebook is, how will faculty be facilitating the students interacting with each other and their peers?
So I think all faculty understand that, part of the learning process is student to student. And then in some sense, in the classes I teach, I know that students learn more from each other than they learn from me. They learn more from explaining to each other. So there's a variety of ways to facilitate this. One is to have group assignments. The other is to actively encourage collaboration during homework assignments, not submitting the same homework, but actively discussing the homework assignments with each other. I also think faculty, we're aware that this is a very challenging time, and it can be very isolating for students. So I think many faculty will be promoting students actively working with each other in their classes and doing ideas like the one Bob suggested of having the first 5 minutes of class be students engaging with each other on the chat to set up study groups together. But for my class, the one I'm going to be teaching in the fall, I'm going to assign some group assignments to students. I'm going to have them randomly picked and paired up with each other to try and foster that student to student learning, because I know that's so important, and it's not as easy to do remotely as it was when everybody was in person.
Thanks. Before we go on, just for those of you who may have joined us late, we had got a lot of questions coming in. We're not going to get to all of them today, but we are going to do our best to respond to them in the days ahead. And at the end of this event, I'll be sharing website addresses where you can go for those answers. And those websites will be updated continuously between now and when the semester starts and beyond. I'm not quite sure who to toss this next question to. We're getting a lot of questions about which actual physical facilities will be open and accessible. We're being asked about music practice rooms and the libraries and places where students may congregate within their pods. Who can help us out on that one?
Well, Dan, you know, the libraries, for example, there'll probably be pretty limited library access at the beginning of the term. Just because the shelter-in-place order right now doesn't really allow for us to do more of that. There is a plan for how to incrementally return the library to larger, access for students. But at the beginning of the term, it'll probably be fairly limited. And it's a hard thing to say, but in fact, there will be spaces outdoors where students can do some interacting with each other and so on. And I think some of the other groups that you've got coming into campus conversations are going to really very specifically address the questions around what will it be like to physically be on the outside part of campus, and how do we interact in those spaces, which I think is really important for students. But we also have to just be honest and say it's going to be it's going to be an unusual and different kind of environment on campus than in an environment where we don't have the kind of public health crisis we do. And that's just going to be part of the world we're going to have to all try to work together to support each other through.
So Paul, your answer touches on another question we're getting, because inherent in what you said is this idea of change and uncertainty. And a lot of people are wondering when and how we might decide to return to in-person instruction or some sort of hybrid presentation as was originally planned. How are we going to make that decision, and what can you tell folks who are wondering about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say, I hope that people are getting a sense from this conversation of just how much effort has gone into planning around the remote instruction itself. And it's going to be a very different kind of experience than what occurred in the spring. So we have that to start with, but we have more during the, let's say in the last 2 months, we've been through the planning for offering more than 1,000 different instructional activities, parts of courses that could be offered in person if we're allowed to have social distancing in classrooms. And so we've got all those things ready to go. The question is, how will we make a decision that it's the right time to be able to do that? And we have a lot of, first of all, I want to emphasize how much effort is going into thinking about that and to planning for it. We have an instruction planning group. Everybody on this call is part of the instruction planning group, and there's probably about a dozen more people. And we meet several times a week, actually, almost every other day pretty much. And we also meet every 2 weeks with a very large group of people, all the deans, all the chairs, and many of the senior staff in every school and college, to discuss all the issues around how we would do these kinds of things. The state has set a parameter. The county has to be in a situation where we're off the monitoring list of the state of California for 14 days before we can resume in-person instruction. And recently, unfortunately, contrary to being off the monitoring list, the number of cases has been climbing, and we're sort of we've been heading recently in the wrong direction. But it seems that there's going to be a pretty big correction in terms of how the public health environment works. Witness our decision to make, a very hard decision to make, to go remote. So we're very hopeful that the environment will kind of reset, that we'll have a real deep recommitment and understanding that it's going to take social distancing, wearing masks, and being responsible in order to help us move back to a situation, but where things are better. But we will probably be making an announcement maybe every 2 to 3 weeks about what we judge the prospects to be for resuming in-person instruction within 2 weeks of that announcement date. And we'll just be updating that as we go along through the semester. It's a 15-week semester. It's still a few weeks away, almost a month away. The prospects are significant that we might be able to return at some point during the fall. And I can also tell you, we have a lot of instructors who are eager to get back into the classroom with students and have an opportunity to interact with them in person. They're going to make things work remotely because that's what they have to do for now, but they're committed and ready to get back. And I hope we're able to do it.
So Oliver, let me come to you with the next one. I'm seeing questions that are coming up on Facebook from people who are obviously thinking, yeah, we get it, extraordinary efforts, it's a lot of uncertainty. Maybe my students should take a gap year. Maybe they should take a year off and let's let the dust settle and see where we stand a year from now. What's your advice? What's your response to that, Oliver?
Well, I think my daughter is going to college this year, and so and it's this is a much more emotional experience than I ever imagined it would be. No Hollywood movie has done it justice. But I also and I have tremendous empathy for parents, and I think it's a family decision. All I can say is, for me, I feel my daughter has an opportunity to go to college. It's not going to be Cal. I'm glad for that. I feel this is a time for her to learn, not just academically, but also learn about life. I've looked at what are the testing protocols at the school, what are they doing for student engagement, what are they doing to foster community, what's the student advising like, and looking at her situation has made me look at our situation at Berkeley with a very different lens. So I've served on the public health committee for the campus. I've seen what the testing is like. I've sort of treated it as if, well, what if my daughter was going to go to Berkeley? But I understand completely that it's a complete family decision. I think one philosophy that people have is that you can take a gap year, but you're missing out on your education. And the world at this point is sort of stood still in a sense. Learning something new and being part of this sort of communal experience together of getting through this pandemic is actually maybe one of the richest experiences you will have in life. And when we get out of this, and we will get out of this, you will be stronger, more flexible, and maybe we will all be more appreciative of each other. But I fully understand it's a family decision, and it can be terrifying, and it also is very specific to each family. I can only talk about my own. I would not dream of telling other people what to do.
Got it. Bob, I understand you also have a child on their way or about to begin their collegiate education. So how would you respond to that question about people wondering about the advisability of taking a year off?
So my youngest is going off to school shortly, which probably changes the urgency level of the situation. But When I talk to parents and students about this, I try to get them away from even thinking about a gap year. It's not a gap. It's a choice of what to do with a significant chunk of your life. And is engaging at and with Berkeley going to get you further along toward being the person you want to be? That's the fundamental question. And I think for many of the people who applied to and got into Berkeley, the answer to that question comes down to, I can advance my education, but maybe it wouldn't be the same. I can make new friends and learn about new people and explore the world, but maybe it wouldn't be the same. And this is a chance to really move myself in the direction that I want to go. So there will certainly be students who decide for many reasons that they don't want to take part and they would rather do something else. As an aside, I happen to know a student who wants to be a physician who is going to be volunteering this coming year in a hospital. There are certainly issues around that. But it's not a gap. It's a choice of what you want to spend a year of your life on. And Berkeley is certainly an attractive use of that.
I'm going to come to Lisa with the same question because I know that she's also got a child about to start or already in college. But Bob, let me stick with you for a second. Is your youngest going to be at home studying remotely, or are they going to be physically located on a campus somewhere?
So he's going to a very small school on the East Coast where they will be arriving a couple of weeks early, and they will be quarantining is not quite the word, but isolating for a while, and then they will be in classes and they will be students. And every parent has to think hard about the health issues of this. But like Berkeley, these schools tend to be pretty serious about it.
So having said that, Lisa, and again, I'll be coming to you in just a second, we have a couple of questions from parents which would along the lines of, look, my kid is going to be staying home. What do we need to set up at the house? What should we be thinking about to accommodate and support my child's academic objectives, needs, and interests? What would you tell them, Bob?
Who is that to?
You. It was to you.
Oh, it's still to me. He's my youngest. I want him out of the house. I think there's a lot of people have been finding that space and privacy to grow and to take part is a very difficult thing to do at home, right? You can see that I'm living in a pile in a corner of the living room. And to the extent that people can, they should do that. But I think that the best you can do to make it possible for your student to forget that they're at home and to think that they're engaged with their new friends, they're engaged with their courses, they're engaged in a new life, it is going to be an important thing. I know that parents love their kids, but interrupting them every 20 minutes to ask them how they're doing is not helping.
Lisa, you're a collegiate parent. Why don't you weigh in on this one about advice for parents who are wondering whether it's time for a year off, and if not, how they can facilitate success from home?
So I just want to lift up Oliver's point that I absolutely appreciate this is a personal decision for every family. And just to explain our thought process for whatever it's worth, my son's starting at UC Santa Cruz in the fall. We've decided, he's my oldest, yet we still want him out of the house. No, I'm kidding. But we've decided that he's going to create a pod. He's going to have a place in Santa Cruz he's lucky that some of his good friends from high school are going there, and he's going to have a place there and be taking courses remotely there. What has been really lovely, just yesterday, Santa Cruz has a quite robust orientation process, particularly his major. And he had a Zoom meeting yesterday that he said was the most fun he's had, just because it had been put together really thoughtfully and had a lot of interaction. And so it just really demonstrates that you can feel connected to an institution, even virtually. But that's the decision that we've made. Again, having looked at what the campus is doing and what the situation is in Santa Cruz in terms of the levels of infection and things like that. In terms of how to get your students to be successful, I can only say from having done online learning last semester with 3 kids, what seemed to really matter was getting them to have some sort of schedule and to stick to it. That's a challenge, making sure they have private space that they have access to at particular points in time. I appreciate that not everyone has the ability to give their child a space that's dedicated just to them, but thinking about, that's why the schedule for us, it was rotating through our different kids that they could have quiet time and access, making sure thinking about how many, what the Wi-Fi is and how many devices have access to the Wi-Fi to make sure the Wi-Fi is stable, but really planning it through. And at least for my son, it was really important for him to have responsibilities to the household, because again, as Bob was pointing out, it's really about starting to spread your wings and develop some independence. And so in the absence of being able to do that separate from your home, it's finding ways to structure their ability to do things on their own, but also contribute right to the well-being of the collective as well. So that would be my unsolicited advice. Appreciating parenting right now is really challenging. For me, the bar is keeping them alive at this point. So just to say, I think we're all doing the best we can, and we appreciate that these are really difficult decisions for parents to be making. And to Bob's point, it's really about how do you want your child to spend their time this year, because the year will go by, and where do you want them to be at the end of it? That may be some way to start thinking about these very difficult decisions.
So Lisa, all that you said about parenting kind of brings us to another question that I think falls into your bailiwick, and that's that there are many graduate students who need childcare, but local schools and childcare are remote as well. So how are we going to support graduate students so they can parent and also teach and conduct research?
So we, again, as Oliver said, understand that childcare responsibilities have been a huge challenge for our students, for our staff, and for our faculty, and that there is nothing that we can do that will completely alleviate that burden, particularly for folks that have very small children at home. What we're doing is we're hoping to double the number of backup childcare hours that are available in order to help folks at least have backup care during the times when they have to teach or when they have to be in class. There's a committee being headed by Sharon Inglis, the new Associate Vice Provost for the faculty, that's looking into other options, thinking about helping people create their own pods or other, just trying to be as creative as possible, appreciating this is a huge issue. And we're also, as part of the support for remote instruction in the fall, trying to see if we can provide quiet spaces for GSIs to be able to record their lectures away from home if they have someone to care for their child, so that they don't have the difficulty of trying to speak for 15 minutes and not be interrupted by a toddler or things like that. But we're doing everything we can to try to address the issue, but we just want to appreciate that no matter what we do, this is going to be very difficult for students. And so we're exploring other policy changes that we could make to just try to address the serious demands that parents are facing right now.
Thanks, Lisa. And before we go on, I just want to, just a quick note for folks who may have joined us a little late today. We're getting a number of questions that relate to subjects we covered earlier. So on the Berkeley Campus Conversations website, you'll be able to see a recording of this and to go back, and we're saying things about studio art classes and about access to research, things we've discussed previously. Also some questions coming in about housing, which we dealt with in depth yesterday, and that session is also on the Berkeley Campus Conversations website. And finally, there are questions coming in about freshmen. And while we will be having a special online event dedicated to new admits, freshmen, and transfers on July 29th, Bob, let me at least pose one question about related to students who are new to campus, new to the campus or the collegiate experience. And it seems that there's a particular level of trepidation and concern about what their experience will be like and whether, in fact, this is a time when that adjustment, that transition to collegiate life can be made. What do you say to that?
Well, this is, I think, goes back to your earlier question about what we learned last spring. Last spring, we transitioned to online, but people already had a chance to form their study groups, had a chance to get to know other people, et cetera. And we're in the third year of a pretty intensive orientation called Golden Bear orientation for incoming students. That's going to have to be very different this year. The students who physically come will still get that orientation, but it's going to comply with public health, and that'll change its character a little bit. I think that at this point, I have to bifurcate a little bit and talk for a second about freshmen, but then spend a little bit more time on transfer students.
Please.
You know, the freshmen are making a transition from high school, and sometimes they're not aware of how Berkeley is different from the perhaps more regimented and more stable things that go on in a high school. Everybody knows their schedule and it's all the same and life is good. Whereas at Berkeley, you are much more independent and you're much more responsible for your own study, your own work. But I think we know how to message that. And I think we know ways to start supporting pulling those people together, whether they're physically here or not. Transfer students are coming in, and every transfer student is really different. They come with many different backgrounds. They're headed for many different programs, and they want to get started right away. And here, I think the message that we're trying to deliver to transfer students is, yes, get started right away. You may not be able to be a full participant in a research project, but you can start and learn your way around. And maybe by maybe by the end of fall, things will be different and you'll be able to proceed. Or start with the courses that are really important to you, because they may not be perfect, but they let you make progress on what you really care about. So we're really recommending to transfer students to just, put both feet in the pool right away in terms of getting the most as they can, because in some sense, this semester is limited, but it gives them a chance to ramp up, and COVID will be over at some point. Next semester or the one after that, they'll have built the foundation they need. So we really encourage, particularly the new transfer students, to take the opportunities they've got to advance what they want to do, why they're coming here.
Before I move on, I just want to ask if any of the other panelists wanted to add to that, these questions. Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to add to what Bob said, I also encourage students to, contact the professors during office hours, go to office hours, engage with faculty and their instructors during office hours. That's so important, not just for engaging in the class, but also building relationships with your faculty and instructors that will help you for, the remainder of your time at Berkeley. Many students write and are concerned about getting letters of recommendation. The foundation of getting letters of recommendation, in my experience, always happens in office hours. And so take advantage of office hours. The other point is we've really learned that communication between, both from the campus to parents and students, and communication from instructors to students has to be very clear in terms of expectations, in terms of breaking news. And so I think we're doing a better job of that. And we're also preparing our instructors for the fact that they need to be very clear about communicating to students. And I just wanted to go back to a point made earlier from parents. One resource that parents have is the Cal Parents Association, or the Cal Parents Network. And I would strongly encourage you to reach out to that group and form cohorts of parents who are in similar situation to you, so you can support each other, but you can also learn how to support your child. I know from my own experience with my daughter that the advice and the help that I got from fellow parents has just been invaluable to me. And so I would encourage you to do the same.
That's great advice. Paul, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to also say that one thing that a student coming to Berkeley for the first time, a freshman or a transfer student this year, will also have to look forward to is the incredible class they're going to be a part of. We're really excited about the group that's been admitted this year to Berkeley. It's a very special group. It's the most diverse group in for more than 30 years that's coming to Berkeley. But it's also just a phenomenally talented, interesting group. And yes, it won't be quite the same as how you build your contacts with the rest of that group, the cohort that you're going to be a part of, won't be quite the same, the actual means of doing it, but the people are going to be very special, and you'll be a part of them, part of that group. And that itself will, everything at Berkeley is really, it's a place where for a person who wants to learn, a person who wants to change the world, everything is set up for that to happen. But so much of that is around your classmates, and they're going to be just wonderful.
Got it. We only have, unfortunately, 5 minutes left. And again, I want to remind everybody, those questions we don't get to, we will do our best to respond to on the various websites whose addresses I'll be providing at the end of the event. But Paul, let me come to you with a question that is being frequently asked, not just in this session, but past sessions, and that's about tuition. There are a number of people who want to understand why we are continuing to charge full tuition, even though the experience we'll be offering is, because of epidemiological concerns and realities, far different than what they expected.
Well, Dan, we are going to hold to the tuition, but I hope people who have been listening have also appreciated the extent to which the essential point of what a student is going to get from Berkeley is holding true. And actually, there are going to be so many ways in which it will be enhanced in many ways. It will be different in others, maybe in some respects not always quite the same. But I really feel the student that comes to Berkeley will get a full Berkeley experience and will really value it for their whole life.
Another one along the same vein, Paul, there are people who are asking that if my student decides to take a year off, can they just come back? Can they be readmitted? How that process works, is that a possibility?
Well, Bob's going to be better at answering that, very accurately than I am. So Bob, can I kick that one to you? Because you are more aware of all the policies exactly.
So I will restrict myself to talking about undergraduates, because graduate professional schools have a lot of complicated individual rules. But for undergraduates who have been at Berkeley already, this is called a withdrawal, and it's pretty much automatic. We've talked about why you might want to do it, but the process is relatively straightforward. Students should check with financial aid and the international office if they're international students. If they're out of state, they should make sure that their in-state versus out-of-state registration doesn't change. So there's some steps that their advisors can help them work through, but it's pretty automatic. As a general rule, though, we don't let new freshmen do this. That's called a deferral. And we would much prefer that students come and engage with us rather than wait a year and take some other new student's place. And it's a little harsh to say it, but that's what it would really be. It would be students this year who are preventing us from admitting new students next year. So we strongly prefer that freshmen attend either remotely or from the city of Berkeley their first semester here.
Thanks, Bob. I want to get to, in these last few minutes that we have, some of the more detailed questions. Earlier in this event, we extolled the virtues of the Berkeley Connect program, and we have a few people asking if we're going to be adding sections, given that they appear to be filled up already.
Hey, I can find out more about that from the team that does those, but we'll certainly try and do that.
All right, so we will post, I think it's safe to say, we will post an answer to that on the registrar site that I'll be sharing at the end. But Bob, go ahead, please.
So there are also some other things that can get you small amounts of contact. There are freshman seminars. There are seminars that are available to transfer students, and there are other kinds of things. These vary a little bit by college. So you should be interested in these and talk to your advisors about what's available to you.
And that brings to mind, oh, Lisa, go ahead.
I was just going to add, we're also expanding. We have a program called Getting into Graduate School. So particularly transfer students, we're going to be expanding the opportunities for mentorship through that program. So stay tuned, go to the GIGS website in about a month, and we should have opportunities for you to connect with grad students to learn about applying to graduate school.
And here's another question. Will there be sports? A lot of people are asking, will there be events on campus with spectators or audiences, whether they're academic, sports, cultural? Where do we stand insofar as that part of collegiate life is concerned, Paul?
I think we've said we're not going to be hosting public events on the campus in the fall. Stay tuned, because I believe, well, it may have happened already, or if not, it's about to be. Cal Performances will be announcing, I think, a wonderful fall virtual program, which is
all virtual.
All virtual, and I think it's going to be really exciting and a really wonderful program. But we're not going to be hosting public events in the fall.
Got it. So we have come to the end of our time just about, but I do want to go around this virtual table one more time and just kind of think for a second about all that we've heard. And I think particularly for those of you who are parents who have so ably channeled the concerns and hopes of so many who are with us today. But just some closing thoughts. And let me start with you, Oliver.
I would, first of all, just like to thank you for joining us today. I realize this is a time of uncertainty and great challenges, but I would like to let you know that at Berkeley, we've done everything we possibly can to prepare for the fall. I think we are more prepared now. We also, we are agile and more nimble than we were in the spring. And we're proud to have your children and to educate them. And we really think highly of our Berkeley students. They really are special. And also congratulations to you for the achievements of your children. Getting through high school and getting into Berkeley is a tremendous achievement, and we will be honored to have them here. So thank you.
Lisa, opportunity to say a few words to the graduate students who you work so closely with.
I just also want to thank you for being on this call and acknowledge that this is a very difficult time. And just to say we are here to serve you. Graduate Division is open, even though we're virtual. Our folks are here to support your work. You have people in your department. There's a GSAO and the head graduate advisor. Get to know those folks, meet them, sit down with them. We have an incredible network of staff and advisors here to support you in your graduate work. We appreciate that everyone's situation is unique, and we will do what we can to make sure that you're able to thrive at Berkeley. And the last thing I would say is that this is sort of an unexpected injection of new pedagogy on campus. And so I also think there's a lot of exciting new instruction that's going to happen. And so we're looking forward to fall, and we're looking forward to welcoming you and supporting you however we can.
Thank you. Paul, a closing thought.
Well, I'd say there's a way for us together to keep public health moving in a good direction. For our whole society, we have to find a way to beat the virus, and also to continue to advance and move ourselves along and not have it completely set us, all the way back. And we can do that together. We're very creative, and we're going to work hard on it. And we're also, as you just saw, we're going to make a hard decision. If we have to pull back, we'll do it. But that won't mean that we're stopping finding a way to learn and to teach and to discover. So we hope you'll join us.
And I'm pleased to give our Dean of Undergraduate Studies, Bob Jacobson, last word.
So I want to mostly talk to incoming students and parents for a second, particularly those who've never been here, don't really know the place. Berkeley is more than just a physical location. It's more than the Campanile and the physics building that right next door to it that needs paint. What it really is all the people who do all the amazing things, so many that you don't know what they all are. And it is still possible to be part of this community while we are dispersed. And to my view, that's the most important thing. To find ways for this community to continue to do all these magical things, even though we're spread across the entire planet now. It's not actually a bad thing.
I want to thank all of you for your time and hard work, and for engaging with some pretty difficult questions, and for helping to continue to provide the campus community with timely information. And for those of you tuned in today, as I mentioned at the top, this was the second in a series of student and family-oriented events. Next up is a special session for new admits, transfers, and freshmen. That'll be on July 29th at 5 p.m. And then on August 11th, also at 5, we'll be talking more about supporting the student experience during these challenging times. For more information about these upcoming events, search for Berkeley Campus Conversations. And then for all the questions we didn't get to, and for questions that weren't even posed, and for questions that will come in the future, please check out these key campus websites regularly for updated information. If I could ask my friends, there we go. Our friends at ETS are going to put up the slide. The first address for student affairs, a very helpful, very comprehensive FAQ. The next site, questions and information about housing. The registrar site will have information and updated FAQs about instruction. And then finally, really, if you want one-stop shopping, it's the main campus coronavirus information site. Again, thank you very much for joining us. We hope you stay safe and that you're well, and by all means, keep your distance. Thanks for joining us.